Hello and welcome back to the Veg Garden. Today I'll be doing my Q&A video, and I've had a few questions over the last few weeks, and I'll be answering them right now. So to start off with, I'm going to be answering Wendy Honour's question of about her tomatoes. My tomatoes are not growing very big. We've had a good summer here in Tasmania, but colder nights than usual. Could this be why? Or should I fertilise them? It's the last week of summer now, so tomatoes need a bit of warmth at night to ripen, but I don't think it contributes much towards size, but it is like in that ripening phase stage of their life, so it could be something to do with that, the colder night. Yellow tomatoes require less heat to ripen than red tomatoes and orange tomatoes, but you do need heat. Fertilising them I don't think will help much in the later part of ripening a tomato. What you could do, and as my great-grandfather used to do, is he used to pick his later tomatoes, the ones that were like a dark green, and put them in a drawer with a banana or an apple or some fruit that was already ripe, because this made the tomatoes ripen because of the gases emitted. Now, one thing I would point out is make sure you swap this fruit often, otherwise the banana or the apple might go off, so just keep an eye on it. And then there's another one here. Toast Butter Waffles is asking, what should we expect when starting gardening, and what do you recommend to use for weeding? So I recommend for weeding is a Dutch hoe to go between rows, and by hand for buckets and containers and stuff. And if you're starting out new ground, you do want to use cardboard and sheet mulch. That's probably the best way of getting rid of weeds in sheet mulching terms. What should we expect in starting gardening would be expect a few failures. Don't expect everything to be perfect first time. Now, you are going to get some good things happen in year 1, and you're going to get some failures in year 10. You know, it is a balance often, but often year 1 is like a learning curve, if you like. That's where you learn the skills that you need to go on. But year 1 is really important. Now, Liberty and Justice, their question is, I'm starting some seeds indoors. They've sprouted fine, but in my experience, they've always just stayed at sprout sizes and never seemed to mature well. Is there something better I can do to help them mature so I can transplant them in a few months? Thanks. One thing I suggest is heat, light, and moisture. They're the three. It's like the fire triangle, but for seed germination. So you need a good amount of moisture, but not too much. You need enough light and enough heat. So I've got a hotbed, as you know from the previous video, and that radiates enough heat through the bottom to start the seeds just to warm the seeds up. I pre-moisten all the compost before sowing, and that should do then through the germination and sprouting stage. And then finally your light. Now, that's where I'm at a downside, because my light comes from the south, but my garden is north facing, and it's behind a hedge, and the back wall of the hotbed is plywood, so I'm actually blocking a lot of the light coming through, plus the house is there as well, so we don't really get much of the midday sun. We just get a bit of early and late sun on the hotbed. But like I say, once those sprouts have started, once the seeds have germinated, you know, they're good to go. And then you need light on them, and make sure it's like if you've got a windowsill, that's all well and great, but make sure you turn them twice a day so they don't lean to one side. Or what I have seen people do is use cardboard wrapped in tin foil behind, so it like bounces the light so they grow straight. Key D Glow Their question is, do you have friends your age who garden? Do you have any thoughts on how to get young people interested in gardening? So I have 2 people I know my age who are interested in gardening. There's the Welsh gardener from the Welsh Gardener channel, and he's 2 years older than me, I think, and he's from South Wales. He does quite a lot, so you should go and check his channel out. I will be putting a link to that in my description now of this video. And a mate of mine who's in school who we like swapping seeds with, and we swap seeds and he comes over and has a look around and stuff. And we give him cuttings, so he's probably watching this now actually. And then my wool mittens, their question is, what if any is the biggest project you have planned for the gardens this season, and is there something new you're hoping to grow? Thanks for making the videos. Biggest project for this year would probably be tidying the edges up. So I've got the old dipping bath, which I'm going to transform into a polytunnel area. Then there's by the oil tank, the top of the food forest, I'm going to be doing a perennial bank on there. Then up at the top of the main garden, I'm going to be holding the bank back with panels and growing on top of the panels and making a compost facility underneath the panels. And then obviously around the polytunnel I want to cover crop that, then plant that in perennials. So over the summer I'm going to be growing annual cover crops, mustard and clover, rye grazing, etc. Just to increase the humus in the soil and fertility, and then I'll be mulching that and then planting my perennials in that. It'll be 2023 then. And is there something new you're hoping to grow? White cucumbers, I'm hoping to grow them. I've got 27 varieties of tomato, and I've only actually grown about 4 of them before. So that'll be something I'm looking forward to. Then I've got a whole host of other things: Jerusalem artichokes, ochre, wild garlic. I'm hoping to grow them anyway. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then we move on to a really good question actually by Jamie Ritterhouse, and he's asking, I'll read the whole thing, it's a paragraph it is. Well, I'm inspired. I'm in Oklahoma, USA, and the climate is variable, so we're pretty variable here actually as well. We're currently heading into what is probably going to be a drought year. We've had 2 inches of rain since January 1st, far below normal. The point being, I was amazed when you spread your mulch, and the caption said it was 4-year-old cow manure. It looked so wet. When convenient, would you discuss your methods of composting? So that manure was piled up for 4 years on the farm in the field, and the reason it's so wet is because it hadn't been turned, it had just been dumped, so it was quite claggy and sticky. So that's the reason why it was 4-year-old, is because the fields were so wet we couldn't get at it to move it, so hence why it went so old. Future plans for composting would be, as I spoke about in the previous question, is the windrowing system below the bank, and also the hotbed will then turn into horse compost manure. And then I've also got some wormeries and worm setups that I'm hoping to expand this year to make some pretty good soil amendments. Were you able to use the cow manure? They've been waiting for you to gather. Yes, it had been waiting. Maybe I have more systematic plans for the future. So yeah, that's the windrows again. Vancouver, their question is, I was wondering, what's something you wish you could grow in the garden but the Welsh climate won't allow? If the climate was a bit warmer, I'd like to grow dragon fruit, bananas and oranges, but unfortunately the weather's too variable, the climate's too wet and windy, and the only way I could grow those fruits in this climate would be to have a really tall greenhouse and heat it 365 days of the year. But the problem with this is costs, and the other problem would be that it's not that common to get those plants in this country because of the climate, so you'd have to source plants from external places, and then you've got the risk of disease and stuff coming over, so it's just not worth it. P Mark 08 is asking, is there such a thing as making too much compost? Now, in my opinion, making too much compost is, well, I don't think you can in my context, because a small garden is quite hard to make too much compost really, but I'm quite lucky with having the farm that I can have a lot of manure as well, but you know, composting that down takes time, so I'm going to be about 2 years before I'm making my own compost at a good stream instead of just like a bit, not, you know, a bit and on and off. So it's going to take me some time to get up to a good composting, well matured stage, and not just, you know, 6 to 9 month old stuff. I want the aged stuff because it's a slower release of nutrients. Carwen G is asking, what got you into gardening? I don't know, a lot of things. So my mother used to plant runner beans with me, where I used to live. We used to grow runner beans. And then my grandfather bought me a polytunnel. It was a 2 metre by 3 metre polytunnel at the time, and that was my little patch to grow in. And then you know, I grew in that on my own mostly, and help from some of the family members, and that got me into growing. I was only about 7, and I was, you know, managing it mostly on my own with a bit of help from my parents. And then when we moved, I didn't really have a garden then, and then, you know, we moved in July, so it was too late to start a garden. And then the following year COVID came along, and my grandfather bought me a polytunnel the end of the season that year, so now I've had a polytunnel for the season of 2021. I can't pronounce this name, but I'm going to answer the question anyway. Do you maintain the kitchen garden by yourself, or do you have help from your family? So I mainly maintain the kitchen garden on my own, but I do have help from a few family members. So, you know, my mother and my sister help me pick the veg a lot of the time. You know, like runner beans and stuff, where you've got some quite big rows and it's taking a while. You know, I will have help. Also, my uncles help me put the polytunnel up, so like one-off jobs, and that sort of thing. The Grapevine Allotment is asking, how many hours a week do you spend gardening, or would you like to be a YouTuber full-time? So probably in the winter I might spend around 5 to 10 hours in the garden a week, just spreading manure, compost and weeding, you know, sheep mulching, etc., moving pots and tidying up around the place. And then in the summer I might be anywhere between 10 and 30 hours a week perhaps, because, you know, after school, before school, weekends, like I might get up at 6:30 on the weekend in the summer sometimes, or 7 say, and then I'll be in the garden until I go to bed at, like, you know, 10 o'clock, just, you know, apart from dinner and the odd check the goats and stuff, normal. I will be in the garden a lot of the time. And then Gally.os is asking, do you do your own compost? So, as I've talked about in the other things, I do most of my own compost. The only compost I buy is a peat-free organic compost. I'm trialling it this year actually, because before I was just buying the cheapest compost and I wasn't getting great success with it, so I am trialing this one. It's a bit more expensive. I know people have had good results with it, but as I say, I only buy that bagged compost for the seeds starting, the trays, because so far I haven't got anything good enough homemade to start seeds in. So maybe in a few years I'll be using worm castings mixed with sand, because otherwise they're too claggy, unless I mix them with, or let them dry out of some sort, like not dry out them but age a bit more than what they're meant to. But otherwise I'm really not sure as to how else I'm going to go about that the tray problem, because a lot of my compost is really coarse because I haven't quite finessed the art of making compost yet. But I'm really hoping the wormery will take over from this bagged compost eventually. So thanks for watching the Q&A video. I'll see you again next week.